Hey, what's going on everybody? Commander Crane here, and we are back with another Pioneer deck tech, and today we're going to be talking about Colorless Ugin Control. Yes, that's right, a fully colorless deck in Pioneer, and I'm really excited to talk about this spicy deck list today. As always, at the end of the video, let me know in the comment section below, what do you think about this deck? Is there a specific card that I should have put in this deck that I did not? Or do you have suggestions for upcoming videos? Just let me know in the comments section. So this is our second deck featuring new cards from Tarkir Dragonstorm. The first one we talked about, it was Abzan Rhinos with the new Skirmish Rhino. And today we're going to be talking about arguably the best card in the entire set. Not necessarily in Pioneer, possibly, just in general in terms of raw power level. And that card is Ugin, Eye of Storms. I mean, this card's just absolutely incredible. When you cast it, you get to exile something. When you cast another colorless spell, hint, hint, that's the point of the deck, exile something else. And then Ugin just has three fantastic abilities. The +2 is just awesome. The 0 makes 3 colorless. Like, that's just good in general. And then the -11 is usually just like the game is pretty much over at that point. This card's incredible, and I knew I had to build a colorless deck with it. And I wasn't sure exactly how I wanted to build this Pioneer deck. And I ultimately decided, let's go ahead and do a control style shell, which will make sense in a second. Although we don't have cards like All Is Dust or Oblivion Stone like we do in Modern, I still think this deck is really, really cool. So, okay, let's go and hop into the rest of the video here. So, Ugins. We're playing 8 different Ugins in this deck. Yeah, that's right. We're not just playing Ugin, Eye of the Storms. We're also playing 2 copies of Ugin the Ineffable and 2 copies of the original Ugin the Spirit Dragon. Ugin the Ineffable is pretty sweet in this deck. Just being able to make our colorless spells cost 2 less to cast is just really nice. Right when it enters, we can also destroy something, so, you know, it feels pretty good. It can protect itself. Overall, pretty solid. I also love Ugin the Spirit Dragon. I mean, it's the original one. Am I crazy for thinking that Eye of the Storms is better than the original Ugin the Spirit Dragon? I think it possibly might be, but I still really do like Ugin. Once again, our entire deck is going to be colorless, so that -X is going to be completely one-sided, which is just really good in this deck overall. So we're playing 8 Ugins. Let's go and take a look at the rest of what we're playing. We're also playing 12 creatures in this deck. So I know that Ugin, you know, was actually trying to seal the Eldrazi, but in this case, we're actually recruiting some of the Eldrazi to help us out. We're playing 4 copies of Matter Shaper and 4 copies of Thought-Knot Seer. So Matter Shaper really in this deck is just an extra cantrip. It's an early body that we can get out to, you know, block a little bit. We can attack with it if we need to. It's really just, it just helps us because it can ramp us realistically if we do put a land into play. That's really the only reason we're playing Matter Shaper. Thought-Knot Seer is just a great card. It gives us some information against our opponent. It's also got a nice body on top of that. So yeah, I just really like Thought-Knot Seer in the deck. And then we're also playing 4 copies of Solemn Simulacrum. Really what it is it's a body that blocks and draws us a card and also ramps us. That's really the only reason why we're playing Solemn Simulacrum in this deck. Its entire purpose is just to block and draw us a card and ramp us, but still a good card in the deck nonetheless. So next thing I want to talk about is the mana rocks that we're playing in this deck. We're not going all in on the mana rocks. It's really just, to be honest with you, like it, you know, we got nothing else going on and it helps us be able to play our Ugins a little bit quicker. So we're playing 3 copies of the Iron Crag. The unfortunate thing in this format is there's really no like 2-mana mana rocks that will help us in this deck. So we're really just playing the Iron Crag. We're never going to trigger the legendary creature ETB thing, but that's fine. We just need it to make mana. That's all we needed to do. We're also playing 3 copies of the Celestus. Although I hate keeping track of night and day in paper, this card's just really nice. It's going to help us, you know, gain some life, draw some cards, and it's a mana rock. It's just pretty good in the deck. And we're also playing 2 copies of Forsaken Monument, which is fantastic in this deck. Whenever you tap a permanent for colorless, add an additional colorless mana, and then whenever you cast a colorless spell, you gain 2 life, and it also does anthem our creatures a little bit. So overall, it's just really nice. I do love the Forsaken Monument in this deck. And then the last thing we have to talk about is the removal spells. What? Colorless? Yeah, that's right. We have removal spells in this deck. We're playing 4 copies of Spatial Contortion and 4 copies of Warping Wail, which Warping Wail is kind of a removal spell, but it also can counter sorceries, which there's a lot of good sorceries in this metagame right now. So honestly, pretty happy with playing that. But worst case scenario, we can also just make ourselves an Eldrazi Scion and then use it on a later turn. Spatial Contortion surprisingly takes out a decent amount of creatures. You know, there is some ways where we could like buff our Thought-Knot Seer or something to like you know, be able to trade up. Not that that's going to happen very often, but overall pretty happy with Spatial Contortion in general. I think of it as kind of like a lightning strike. Like anything lightning strike is able to kill, you know, for creatures, we can also take it out with Spatial Contortion. So something to think about, but overall pretty happy with our removal suite here. And that's the entire main board except for our lands. So our lands, we're playing 24 of them. Our land base is a little bit different than the average deck, and this is part of the reason why I really consider this a control deck. We're playing 4 copies of Sunken Citadel along with the 8 you know, like Field of Ruin and Demolition Field package. I really love this. So we'll kind of talk about this later in the video, but Field of Ruin and Demolition Field are just fantastic in the metagame, just as a whole, taking out man lands and shock lands and utility lands and a whole bunch of different things. Sunken Citadel is also fantastic just because it makes 2 mana for these, so just Sunken Citadel by itself can take care of these cards, but Sunken Citadel also powers out a couple of different lands that we're playing in this deck. We're also playing 4 copies of Blast Zone, just because it's really nice having this effect on a land. You know, we don't have to put any cards in our deck, you know, to be able to destroy specific permanents, and then Blast Zone can just kind of help take care of that. It can realistically destroy any permanent that we need it to. And then we're also playing 2 copies of Haven of the Spirit Dragon. A lot of the, you know, different mid-range and control decks that we play against, they're going to, you know, make us discard our Ugins or whatever, and Haven of the Spirit Dragon can help buy those back, as well as make colorless mana for our Eldrazi, which is really, really important. And then we're playing 6 basic wastes, just because we're playing Field of Ruin, Demolition Field, and we're also playing Solemn Simulacrum, so we want to make sure that we have some basic wastes in this deck. And as our spicy basic land of the day, every time I include wastes in a deck, I always include this one, just because whenever I think of the card wastes, this is the art I think of. These are the ones that I opened the most of back in the day. So again, whenever I have wastes like in a commander deck or, you know, or pioneer deck, I always play these ones specifically. Okay, so that's the entire main board. Let's go ahead and hop into the sideboard here. So, as always, the disclaimer with the sideboard is my sideboard might look different than yours. This is a combination of cards that I like to play based off of what I personally run into in paper, as well as Magic Arena. Spoiler alert, they're all going to be artifacts just because, I mean, we're a colorless deck. What else are we going to be able to do? We're just going to play artifacts. So, but I really do like these artifacts that I featured here in the sideboard. So we're playing 4 copies of Fountain of Renewal. This is just a good card against aggro. Surprisingly, you're going to gain a lot of life from this card, and over time, it'll definitely add up some extra value. And then when you don't need it anymore, you can just sag it and draw a card. I really do like Fountain of Renewal in this sideboard. We're playing 3 copies of Ratchet Bomb. It takes care of pretty much anything. That's why I'm playing it. I chose it over the Filigree Silex just because, not that we'll be playing like double Ratchet Bomb a lot. I wanted to have that as an option, so that's why I'm just playing 3 Ratchet Bombs. Yeah, I guess we maybe could have just played like 1 Filigree Silex and 2 Ratchet Bombs. Yeah, whatever. 3 Ratchet Bomb. We're just playing 3 Ratchet Bomb. And then we're also playing 2 copies of Sorcerous Spyglass. I chose it over Pithing Needle because, you know, we're not trying to curve anything. We don't need to exactly hit everything on tempo. And also getting some extra information against our opponent is definitely very, very nice. You know, don't be surprised if you name Besiju a lot with this card. We're also playing 2 copies of Unlicensed Hearse. It exiles graveyards. That's why we're playing it. It's just a really, really good card. We're also playing 2 copies of the Stonebrain because guess what? It gets rid of any problematic card our opponent has. We get rid of a combo piece, a specific land. Doesn't even matter. That's why we're playing the 2 copies of the Stonebrain. And then we're also playing 2 copies of Weathered Runestone. It's good against a number of different decks. For our opponents trying to cheat something in from the graveyard, or for our opponents playing Collected Company, doesn't even matter. Weathered Runestone puts an end to both of those things. That's why we're playing 2 copies in the sideboard. So the next thing we have to talk about is the tips in strategy. Again, a kind of a newer segment here for the deck techs on the channel. I have 3 specific tips that I'm going to give you that will help you, you know, pilot this deck a little bit better, as well as just overall knowledge of this deck. So the first thing I want to talk about is number 1, don't rush if there's no pressure. Don't feel like you have to immediately play your Ugin as fast as you can. Like, do you want to? Like, relatively speaking, yes. But, you know, feel free, if our opponent is not giving us any pressure, feel free to go ahead and get out the Matter Shaper, the Thought-Knots here to get some more information. Feel free to, you know, activate our Field of Ruins, kind of start hating on our opponent's land base a little bit. Like, don't feel like you immediately have to just ramp Ugin. Like, feel free to go ahead and get a board presence before you play Ugin, so that way we can protect it, as well as, you know, maybe even have some more pressure on our opponent. So do keep that in mind while you're playing this deck. Number 2, these spells cost a colorless with Ugin the Ineffable in play. I actually had to look this up just to verify. So Ugin the Ineffable says colorless spells you cast cost 2 generic less to cast. if we have this in play with Spatial Contortion and Warping Wail, we still have to pay the mandatory Colorless. It's really weird that we have to do that, and like, for me, it makes sense. Like, it's a Colorless, right? So we should be good to go. Nope, you still have to pay the Colorless mana. We can't just play Ugin the Ineffable and then hold up Spatial Contortion and Warping Wail. So do keep that in mind. I just figured that was a good tip for people who are looking to play this deck. And then the last thing I want to talk about, most decks play very few basics in Pioneer. So don't be afraid to just start firing off Field of Ruins and Demolition Fields and start taking out all of our opponent's lands. Do not be afraid to do that. Most decks, like specifically the ones I play here on the channel, I'll usually play it, like if it's a monocolor deck, I'll play, or if it's a two-color deck, I'll play like 1, maybe 2 basics. I usually don't feature more than 3, but it kind of depends on the list overall. Obviously, if our opponent's playing a monocolor deck, they're going to play a decent amount of basics, so I wouldn't necessarily prioritize this line of play against them. But again, a lot of decks play 1 basic, so you might be able to just start taking out other lands and just basically start strip mining them. So do keep that in mind when you're playing. Again, Sunken Citadel, prioritize that. It's our best land that we can play on turn 1, so that way we can potentially start Field of Ruin and Demolition Field on turn 2, which is definitely really, really cool, and I think a very crucial part of this deck's overall strategy. Okay, then the last thing we have to talk about is the budget options for this deck, which I'll be honest with you, this deck is relatively pricey, at least at the top end. So you can swap out Ugin, oh my gosh, I'm already forgetting the name of it. It's something of the Storms. I apologize that I'm forgetting the name of this Ugin, Eye of the Storms. So Ugin is relatively pricey. I know I do have the $50 price tag on there. So as of the recording of this video, like, it's still kind of in pre-order territory, so it could be a different price when it initially comes out. I'm actually thinking, like, technically, as of the recording of this video, it says it's like $100, and I know that Ugin is not going to be $100 a piece once the set actually does come out. But feel free to go ahead and maybe swap those out. Maybe even play, I can't even believe I'd say this, play the original Ugin the Spear Dragon as a budget option, or more budget option, and you can also play more Ugin the Ineffable. It's definitely a good option. You can also play some more budget mana rocks, or if you just don't like the day-night cycle of the Celestis, you can definitely swap it out for something like Adhesion Archive. I think that's a fantastic option. The current list as it's constructed right now is $296 US. But if you literally cut the Ugins, this deck gets incredibly cheap. So cutting Ugin Eye of the Storms, I was able to get the list down to $97 US, and I really didn't cut that much. All I did swap the Thought-Knot Seers just to save ourselves a few extra bucks, and then I did swap out the Haven of the Spirit Dragons just because they go for like $250 each. But really, Ugin Eye of the Storms is the only expensive card in this entire deck, so assuming that card does go down in price, which I think it will, this deck will be relatively cheap to build. But overall, if you do spend a lot of money on Ugin Eye of the Storm, it's really not a big deal because the card is just absolutely incredible. I cannot stress enough how good I think Ugin Eye of the Storms actually is. I think Pioneer might actually be like the worst format for Ugin in a way in terms of like overall power level, but I still think the card is absolutely crazy strong. And definitely let me know in the comment section below if you've got a few of these Ugins, or if you do end up building a deck with it. I'd love to hear about it in the comment section. Alright, so that takes us to the end of the video here. Thanks so much for watching. The deck lists are in the description below if you'd like to check them out for yourself. Huge shout out to our channel members, Ralph, Matt, Arcadius, Ray, Gary, Saranoki, Night Red 3, and our premium channel member, Michael D. If you're interested in being a channel member, it starts at $1 US a month, and you get access to the exclusive Commander Crane Discord, as well as other features here on the channel. So, I'm Commander Crane, thanks for watching this video, and I hope to catch you in the next one.